Freeman, the guy who suggested that he had sat on a bench, he pointed out, now think about this, because if you really want to understand what a word means, don't just look at the definition. You have to look at the assumptions it rests upon and the implications thus created. Application, if it means to beg, he who begs knows exactly what they're begging for. They know exactly what they're giving up for it. They are either acknowledging that the authority to grant exists, or they are willing to create it by transference. And finally, it's always voluntary. You're never, ever obliged to beg.
Right, because if you were obligated to do any of these things, that would make you a slave, wouldn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
And at least here in America, there's a prohibition against slavery. There's not supposed to be such things. So that's why this goes back to the beginning. You're saying that all of these things, all of these applications and registrations and things that we believe are mandatory aren't, in fact, mandatories. They are, as you term them, offers, correct?
It's an offer. It's an invitation to accept my authority over you, and in return, I will give you limited liability for your actions. And if you decide that you want to live your life fully responsible for your own actions, what do they have to offer you?
So you can reject their offer, but what do you do in that case? I mean, if you've got some angry bureaucrats that, really want to enforce their way upon you, what's the appropriate way to reject that offer, and what do you do in that case?
First, you're asking me about building a house, essentially. The way I look at it, you're saying, how do I build and protect my house? And I would say make sure you have a good foundation. They don't do this. If you serve notice of understanding and intent, a claim of right, you get it properly perfected, judicially sanctioned, and then you have a fee schedule. So what if they want to enforce their will against you? You're going to be earning $2,000 an hour. Let them try. And when all is said and done, it's not their system that's going to be deciding it. It's going to be a notary public, likely.
Now, this is I'm not familiar with this particular process, but basically, if they send you a letter, with their saying you must apply for this, blah blah blah, you send them something back, essentially asking them several questions, right? That's basically what you do.
I do what is called a conditional acceptance. If you reject an offer, imagine someone invites you to their home for lunch. You don't know what it is they're trying to do, but that might be what it is they're doing. If you just say no, they're going to feel dishonored. The way to avoid dishonoring your fellow man in a situation like this is you send them a letter. It's called the conditional acceptance, and you say, yes, I've noticed your notice. You don't want to ignore a notice. If you do that, you go into dishonor. I've got your notice. I see how you're telling me I must apply. I have some questions. And you can discharge any notice. You can remove the power from that notice by serving them a notice seeking clarification of their original notice. You're not rejecting it. You're just seeking some clarification, and everyone's got that right. So you ask them, this word that you used, what exactly does it mean? What exactly does this mean to you? Not to me, to you.
Right, because the only way you could ever sign anything is if you totally understood what it said, and that's all you're doing is you're just trying to clarify things.
Yeah, and even the word understand is a very, very tricky one. Legally speaking, it's identical to stand under. If you look it up, it means to grasp, to seize, to comprehend. It doesn't mean. I can look at some words, know what they mean, and because I know what they mean, I refuse to stand under them or understand them. They will try to get you. Do you understand this? Do you understand this? And they want you to think, oh, if I say no, I'm an idiot. But it's a choice. It's like a rat trap with cheese on it. A smart rat might look at it and say, yes, I see that's cheese. I see I'm hungry for cheese. I would like it. But I also see how it's attached to this mechanism, which looks pretty painful, and I don't understand that. So, no, I am not seizing the cheese. I know what it is. And for that, I'm not standing under it or understanding it.
When you write back to the bureaucrats and you ask questions, you notice their notice, and then you ask several questions of clarification. You conditionally accept it. Yes, I accept I accept your notice, and here's a notice of several questions I have. When they receive that back, what goes through their heads, and what do they normally do in return?
I really can't tell you what goes through their heads.
I would guess I guess they hardly ever see anything like that, right? No, I mean, they're used to people doing certain things.
When I started, I'm pretty sure that it was new to them, but now I'm pretty sure that they're swimming in documents like this. I've been rather active.
How do they come back? Do they ever bother writing back, or do they just sort of drop the issue most of the time?
Actually, I wish I had the letter on me, but on our website you can see a reply that a guy received from going through the process of serving notice of understanding and intent and a claim of right. It's a reply from his ex-MP, who happens to be the Minister of Revenue, the one in charge of Canada Revenue Agency. She acknowledges receipt of his notice of understanding and intent and a claim of right and fully describes him as a Freeman-On-The-Land and states that it's been noted and she doesn't wish to dispute it. Well, she doesn't explicitly state that she wishes to dispute, but she says it's noted. It was an invitation to discuss or dispute. She's not accepting it. The guy's got a get-out-of-jail-free card now. He can show this anywhere. And up here, I don't know what's happening down in the States, but up here, dude, there's so many people who are acting on this information. It's driving the cops, and, well, the cops like it. But the government is certainly changing in a huge, huge way. I think a lot of that has to do with our Attorney General, who I think is an extraordinarily good and honorable man, Wally Opal. I've seen so many changes in our justice system since he has taken office.
Well, we've been trying to for a while up here in America, trying to figure out how do we get out of this system? How do we go back to freedom and liberty without necessarily having to run through the rigmarole of political elections and that sort of thing? We certainly aren't interested in violent
representatives. What I found is that in any common law jurisdiction, the only form of government recognized as lawful is a representative one. Representation requires mutual consent unless you're dealing with someone who is clearly incompetent.
Robert, I know I said we'd only have you on for an hour, but I've got callers on the line, and they've got questions for you. Can we hold you over for a little bit?
Are any of the callers cute?
What? They're on the phones. I honestly don't know, but would you be able to hang on for a few?
Sure, I'm having fun.
All right, hang on. We'll bring you back. We've got Kathy on the line. She's a lady. John in New Hampshire, Tennessee's Christian anarchist is on the line as well, all wanting to talk to Robert Menard from thinkfree.ca. Trying to think outside of the box here. This is your show. It's Free Talk Live. Hour 2's coming up. Very unusual that we'll hold a guest over from 1 hour to the next, but we've done it in this particular case because it's such an interesting topic. It's something that very few people ever even broach in their lifetimes. We've got Robert Menard on the line. He is one of the men behind thinkfree.ca. It's a Canadian website. That's why there's the .ca. That's thinkfree.ca. And essentially, just to sort of recap, somehow, I don't know how I'm going to do this, recap the last hour for those of you just tuning in. Basically, Robert had a bit of a situation with the government up in Canada that led him to actually dig around through the law books or through the statutes and try to come to understand some of the things that most people never even bother to do. To find out, to discover that, for instance, a lot of words that you might think you know what they mean, like person or child or must or application or submission or registration, these words don't necessarily mean what you think they mean, because in law, the lawyers can redefine these terms. If you look, there are definition sections in the law, and they can take a word that you might think you know and completely redefine it to make it something totally different. Am I accurate so far, Robert Menard?
Hang on.
Okay. Bang on.
As a matter of fact, you know what? I went to a professor in the University of Windsor when I was down there, a linguistics professor. And I asked him, how many definitions would I have to change in the English language to create a new language entirely? He thought about it, and he said 2. I said 2? He said yes. If you were to take the definition of you and me and switch those around, you would create a language which would generate entirely different obligations on both parties. So you would have a new language.
So we've been talking about these different things, these forms and things that government people would like for you to fill out in order for you to submit to them, in order for you to register your vehicle or your car with them, which essentially gives them control over that item. An application essentially means to beg. And, I mean, there's all kinds of interesting things that you've gone over here so far. But as a result of all this, a bunch of people have called in that want to talk to you. So we're going to jump into those calls here. Let's start with ladies first. So let's go to Kathy in New York. You're on Free Talk Live with Robert Menard. Hello, Kathy.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Hi.
Oh, I love the show. I wanted to know about the driver's license. How can I get some freedom and, to avoid all the paperwork, all the everything with a driver's license and registrations also?
Are you a taxi driver?